My multivariate analysis presentation addresses the issue of access to education in China and whether or not it is becoming more or less accessible over time. I approached this question by first asking which factors influence access to education, namely household income, gender, and region inhabited, then controlling for age. I used the CCFR 06 dataset for China. Methods used were frequency analysis, multiple regression, and the elaboration paradigm by adding control variables to a regression equation. The sample size was 2,000. By controlling for age, we should be able to see whether the links between wealth, gender, region, and level of education have been growing stronger or weaker. A weaker relationship would indicate that education is indeed becoming more accessible in China, whereas a stronger one would indicate that it is becoming less accessible. This will manifest if older people have levels of education that are less strongly linked to the three dependent variables. Despite economic progress, it would seem that education in China is becoming less accessible. The basis for these assumptions lies in academic literature, which seems to suggest that rural, poor students have long been cut off from higher education. This situation doesn't seem to be getting any better with the dramatic expansion in student population and the Chinese government's inequitable funding of rural and urban areas, as well as the rise of private universities and institutions. Some groundwork has been laid to increase women's access to education, but its effect is questionable. The first thing I looked at was the frequency distribution for my independent variable level of education. The average respondent completed some amount of high school, but most only completed elementary school. Very few completed university, 8.1%, and even fewer went on to complete postgraduate degrees, 0.4%. The literature strongly suggested that income, gender, and region inhabited all played significant roles in determining one's access to education. These were therefore selected as my three dependent variables. The three questions I have picked are meant to measure these concepts. I expect to see a positive relationship between income, community size, and level of education. I expect that men will at large have higher levels of education than women. Finally, I believe that education is in fact becoming less accessible in China, and therefore when controlled for age, these three variables will have had a larger effect on younger respondents. The results of my multiple regression analysis do show that the initial hypotheses are correct. The S-score is 0, and therefore the results are not due to sampling error and are statistically significant. Tolerance levels indicate there are no problems of collinearity. The adjusted R-square indicates explained variance of approximately 15%, a positive relationship for both income and region. Controlling for the effects of gender and region, a one-category increase in income produces 40% of a category increase in level of education. The beta values indicate the relative influence of the three variables. Income plays the most decisive role, followed closely by region and then gender. The next step was to add the control variable to the regression equation, age. As you can see, the adjusted R-square is considerably stronger in this new situation, meaning that for respondents under the age of 45, 7% more variance in level of education attained is explained by these factors, namely gender, income, and region. By far, the biggest change can be seen in the new B value for gender, which shows that women under the age of 45 on average have attained lower levels of education than women over 45. The B values for income and education are also slightly higher, but not to the same degree. Tolerance levels still show no signs of multicollinearity, and the S-score was still 0, so the results are not likely due to sampling error and are statistically significant. This is an example of specification wherein the control variables significantly affect and varies the results. In this case, the age category 0 to 45 was significantly more affected by factors such as wealth, region inhabited, and gender. 22% rather than 15% of variants are explained by these factors. Therefore, arguably, education is less accessible now, especially for women. Observations are consistent with the original hypotheses. Wealth and community size have a strong positive relationship with level of education. Men are at large more educated than women, and these statistics are stronger for the younger age category, under 45. Women, poor, and rural populations are vulnerable to these continuing changes. A society in which income is still the largest determinant of level of education is hardly equitable. This relationship is a circular one, as often it can be equally stated that level of education determines income. In China, there is also a big divide between level of education in urban and rural communities, which indicates the poor distribution of government resources. While the literature did suggest that progress was being made on bridging the gap between male and female access to education, the data did not reflect those changes. Further research should be conducted to substantiate these claims. This is certainly not the whole story. Access to education is, in my opinion, an inalienable right, and therefore it is inexcusable that factors such as these play any role in determining one's level of education. Further research should focus on conducting similar analyses for different countries around the world, including Canada and the US, to see how we match up. Syntax.